Welcome to Brave Conversations, where real stories lead to brave moves. I'm Barbie Armenta, storyteller, speaker, realtor, and guide for women navigating midlife transitions. If you're standing at a crossroads, wondering what's next, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Brave Conversations. So the phone rang in the middle of the night. I picked it up, still half asleep, and a woman's voice said, "Do you know where your husband is?" I didn't even think. I just snapped back and said, "Do you have a problem?" And she goes, "No, but you might." And without even thinking or asking a single question, I hung up on her. And I have replayed that moment a million times in my head because the truth is, the second I hung up, I regretted it. I have questions. Who was I speaking to? Who was she talking about? And where is my husband? I sat in the dark waiting for him to come home, and I had no idea what I was going to say. But really, to understand how we got there, you need to know where it started, because that phone call didn't just interrupt a night. It interrupted a story that I thought was settled. Keep in mind, this was the early 90s. No cell phones, no caller IDs, no tracking anyone's location. If the phone rang, you just answered it. If someone was late, you waited. And if something felt off, you sat with it. Before we talk about brave moves, you need to know a little bit about my story, because brave moves don't come out of nowhere. They're shaped by what we've lived, what we've lost, and what we've survived. But this podcast exists because there are so many women, especially in midlife, who find themselves standing in a season they never planned for, a season that looks nothing like the life they imagined. And yet somehow there's still this quiet whisper that maybe, just maybe, there's more ahead. This is a place for those women. See, I got married at 21 years old because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I graduated from high school, I got my cosmetology license, and then I got my first job as a stylist. And then soon after, I met this great guy with an adorable German Shepherd, and I thought all he needs is a wife and kids. So we dated for a year, and then we had the big traditional church wedding. And then 1 year later, I had my son at 22. I was young, hopeful, and just certain that my life would look like the one I grew up with. My parents got married at 18, and they stayed married until they passed away in their 70s. And I just assumed that would be my story too. I didn't question it. I didn't even imagine an alternative. But a couple of years into my marriage, we bought our first home, and I can still see it. Sitting at the table with my coffee, flipping through the thin pages of the newspaper, because that's how you found a house back then. Tiny fonts, short descriptions, and tiny little photos that you can't blow up like with your phone. You just had to imagine everything. And then I saw it. This little cottage in Arlington, Texas. That was pretty much the whole description, just that. I couldn't wait to see it. When we pulled up, it wasn't big, it wasn't impressive, but it felt right. It was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths with a bay window in the front that gives so much light. It was a perfect starter home. That house held my first years of motherhood. It held bedtime routines, baby toys, and so many dreams about the future. I thought, this is it. This is my life. I threw myself into making that little house a home. And if you lived through the 90s, this might sound familiar because I sponge painted the kitchen mauve and blue. At the time, I thought it was fabulous, but it was not the best idea, just like putting border paper at the top of every other room in the house. Neither of these things were a great idea, but I just wanted a home that felt like me. My son also learned to walk in that house, and I can just see it so clearly, his little wobbly legs taking those first steps across the floor. I didn't know then how fragile life could be. I didn't know how quickly certainty could change. Only I knew I was trying to do the right things and trying to build the life that I imagined. But something started to shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't all at once, but there were signs. My husband was telling me about this young girl at work and the challenges that she was having, and I just ignored the red flags. I think I just didn't want to see it. I'd even stopped by his job one day, and she was standing with her arm around him, and she was wearing his jacket. I mean, they're just friends, right? But he managed a restaurant at the time, so late nights weren't that unusual. So I just convinced myself that that was normal. I believed that love lasted, and I did not believe in divorce. But then came that night. The call, the voice, and the sentence that didn't belong in my life. But I just sat there afterwards, like wide awake, just waiting. No phone to check, No way to get answers, no way to prepare myself, just the sound of the house, the same house I painted, the same house where my son took his first steps, and the same house that felt unfamiliar. But I just remember thinking, this is not how my story goes. I wasn't even really angry. I was just really a little embarrassed. Ashamed that I didn't know what was happening in my own marriage, and ashamed that the life I trusted so deeply was unraveling without my permission. And that night taught me something I never wanted to learn. You can be faithful, you can be committed, you can follow the plan and still be blindsided. But that little house stopped feeling like safety. It was full of questions. Who was I if this didn't last? What did home even mean now? And how do you grieve a future that hasn't technically ended yet? That house just held my hope, and it held the moment that I was disappointed. But looking back, I see it clearly. The house was the first of many, and each home in my life would mark a transition. Each one would reflect what was happening inside me before I even had words for it. But my husband denied everything, of course, that was going on. And then not long after, he asked if she could move in with us to help take care of our son. My son and I soon moved out, and she moved into our home. Because sometimes the bravest move isn't fixing what's broken. Sometimes the bravest move is admitting that the house you believed could be your forever can no longer be your home. So my son and I moved into an apartment, and I remember thinking, this is not how this was supposed to go. And I wasn't just grieving marriage. I was grieving a story that I thought I was living. The certainty, the future that I assumed was guaranteed. Because when you grow up believing marriage lasts forever, divorce doesn't just break your heart, it shakes your whole identity. Who am I now? And what does my life look like now? And how did this happen? But looking back, I can see how much those early homes marked different seasons in my life. That my first house represented hope and beginnings, and the apartment represented survival and heartbreak. But each space held something different, and each one shaped me in ways I didn't yet understand. But for a long time, I didn't tell this story out loud. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think anyone needed to hear it. Maybe I didn't want to hear it. But over the years, I've learned something important, that stories create connection, and connection creates healing. That's why this podcast exists. Brave Conversations is about the real stories we don't always put on social media. It's about the identity shifts, the faith, the loss, the courage, and the brave moves we make, both internally and physically. Because our lives aren't just shaped by what happens inside of us. They're shaped by where we live, where we land, and where we find safety again. Our homes hold our becoming. If you're listening today and your life has not gone according to plan, I want you to hear this clearly, because God is not finished with your story. Even when life doesn't turn out the way you imagined, there is still an abundant life ahead. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly." He doesn't say, unless you've been through a divorce, made a bad decision, or anything else. God has an abundant life for you. He is in the business of redeeming and restoring our lives. I've lived it, I'm living it, and I can't wait to walk through these stories with you. This podcast is a place for honesty, hope, and the courage to believe that what's next might be different, but it can still be beautiful. I am so glad you're here.
Brave Conversation.